So, we all think we have a pretty good handle on how the world works, right? Gravity is a thing, water is wet, and fluffy clouds are, well, they're basically weightless. Or are they? It turns out some of our most basic ideas about the world are about to get completely turned upside down. Today, we're going to uncover some of the most surprising science that's been hiding right under our noses.
Look, our intuition is an amazing thing. It helps us navigate the world every single day. We see a cloud floating up there, and our brain says, yep, that's light as a feather. We think, of course, cold water is going to freeze faster than hot water. I mean, it just seems like common sense, doesn't it? But that's where science comes in and just loves to mess with us. It shows us this whole other reality that's way weirder and honestly, way more interesting than we ever thought. So, you ready? Let's dive in and see how many things you thought you knew are about to change. Okay, first up, let's just talk about the world around us. The stuff we see every single day, but maybe don't really see. Our first stop is going to challenge your intuition with something you've probably looked at 1,000 times. No, seriously, think about it for a second. We watch them drift across the sky so effortlessly. They look like big, harmless cotton balls. So what's your gut telling you? There's no way, right? Yeah, over 1 million pounds for just an average, everyday cumulus cloud. See, it's not just vapor up there. It's made of millions and millions of tiny, but very real water droplets. And all that water adds up. We're talking more weight than a whole herd of 100 elephants just floating above your head. Kinda changes how you see them, huh?
All right, if that didn't break your brain, this next one will. It's called the Mpemba effect, and it sounds completely backward, but it's true. Under the right conditions, hot water can actually freeze faster than cold water. Now, scientists are still hashing out the exact reasons, but a cool theory is that the particles in hot water are already moving around so fast, they can sort of snap into the crystal structure of ice more efficiently. It's kind of like it's easier to parallel park with a bit of momentum instead of just inching back and forth. Just wild.
So, the outside world is already way weirder than we give it credit for. But what about us? What about this incredible machine that we live inside every single day, our own body? Oh yeah, it gets strange in here. For starters, you weren't born with the skeleton you have now. Not even close. When you came into the world, you had about 300 bones. But as you grew up, a bunch of them, especially in your skull, started fusing together. By the time you're an adult, you're left with the 206 we all know. You literally had more parts as a baby. Now let's talk about our senses. We always hear about how amazing a dog's sense of smell is, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. But we really sell our own noses short. It's a way more powerful piece of equipment than you might think. Go on, take a wild guess. A couple thousand? Maybe 100,000? Are you feeling bold? 1 million? Not even close. The latest research suggests that the human nose can tell the difference between at least 1 trillion different scents. 1 trillion. Think about that. From the smell of your morning coffee to that weird smell in the back of the fridge, your nose is an absolute powerhouse. And the scale of our own bodies is just nuts. That powerful engine pumping blood through you right this second, your heart, is only about the size of your clenched fist. And at the other end of the spectrum, the smallest bone in your entire body is called the stapes, and it's tucked away deep inside your ear, helping you hear my voice right now. You know, scientists, they can have a really twisted sense of humor sometimes. Case in point, this word, hippopotamomonstrosesquipabaliophobia. And what does it mean? It's the official clinical name for the fear of long words. And yep, you guessed it, the word itself is a monstrous 36 letters long. How cruel is that? If you're afraid of long words, you can't even say the name of your own phobia. That is some top-tier trolling by the scientific community. All right, so let's zoom back out. We've talked about our bodies, now let's talk about our home, planet Earth. It's got some pretty weird quirks of its own. You know that incredible, fresh, earthy smell you get right after it rains? Especially after a long dry spell. It's one of the best smells in the world, right? Well, it actually has a name, petrichor. And it's not just the smell of water. It's a chemical mix of oils that plants release and compounds made by soil bacteria, all kicked up into the air by the raindrops. And speaking of water, we call Earth the blue planet, and it makes sense. It's covered in this stuff. But that's incredibly misleading. Take a look at this. A whopping 97% of all that water is salt water. Most of the rest, another 2%, is locked up in glaciers and ice caps. When you get right down to it,
Every person, every animal, every plant on land relies on that tiny little 1% of fresh water to survive.
Our whole concept of a day and a night is also just a suggestion, depending on where you are. If you were standing at the North Pole, because of the way the Earth is tilted, you'd only get one sunrise and one sunset per year. The sun would come up in the spring, circle around the sky for months, and then finally go down in the fall.
Okay, we've talked about big things like clouds and planets. We've talked about our bodies. But what about the fundamental stuff that everything is made of? Well, let me tell you, this is where it gets really weird. We all learn in school that water has 3 states, right? Solid, liquid, and gas. Ice, water, steam. Simple. But what if it could be all 3 of those things at the exact same time? At a super specific temperature and pressure called the triple point, that's exactly what happens. The lines just blur, and you can literally watch a container of water boiling and freezing simultaneously. And how about a little modern alchemy? Sounds crazy, but stick with me. Diamonds are just carbon atoms, all lined up in a really tight, strong pattern. And what's peanut butter full of? Carbon. So, scientists figured out that if you take peanut butter and subject it to insane amounts of heat and pressure, you can actually force those carbon atoms to ditch their old life and rearrange themselves into a genuine diamond.
All of these facts just go to show that what we think of as reality is really just a sliver of what's actually going on. And that brings us to one last really mind-bending idea. Just let that sink in for a minute. Everything we've ever found, every star, every planet, every species, every rock, we gave it a name. But what about the thing that's doing all the naming?
That's right, the human brain. It's the only object we know of in the entire universe that became aware enough to look at itself, to study itself, and to decide, I'm going to call myself the brain.
And that just leaves us with this huge looping question, doesn't it? Everything we know, every scientific fact we've talked about today, every law of physics, it has all been observed and interpreted by the very organ we're trying to figure out. We're kind of like the universe looking at itself in a mirror. So you have to wonder, what else is hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to figure out a new way to look?